Okay then, so this video is about the other social factors other than class which influence how people vote in the UK. And as you can see in the booklet, this video should correspond to this bit here, which is on gender, age, ethnic minorities, education. Okay, so I've got a quick PowerPoint. This PowerPoint is on Teams. I just thought it might be worth me just going over the various charts just to make sure everyone's understood them, so you can then understand the charts in order to do these types of questions. Okay then, so as I said, the PowerPoint is on Teams. If you give you a moment, I will just load it up. Okay, here we go then. So we've got a picture here of a family. Right, so gender first of all. This obviously is male or female. At the bottom we can see here you got election 1974 M, 1974F, 1979M, 1979F, etc., etc. And the blue bars means the percent difference of females or males voted for a party. So, for example, in this first one, 1974M, we've got a red bar with 11. That means that 11% more men voted Labour than Conservative. In the same election, females were 1% more men 1% more Conservative than Labour. Okay, 1979, Mrs Thatcher got 3% more men than Labour did, and in terms of females, 12% more females than 12% more females voted Conservative than Labour. Okay, and you can see that for most of these elections, the male and female vote tend to favour the Conservatives. The differences being those Blair years, 1997, men really liked Tony Blair, 14% more likely to vote for Blair than for John Major, and females as well for 12% different. Interestingly, in 2017, males were 6% more likely to vote Conservative than Labour, but females were dead even, okay? So they were much more even between the two than they were later on. I'll show you the 2019 figures shortly. Okay, in terms of age, again, there's clear differences in party support. So we can see here, 18 to 24-year-olds, 56% of that age group voted Labour, 21% of that age group voted Conservative, and then 11% Lib Dem, 6% SNP, etc., etc. 25 to 29, again, much the same. 30 to 39, again, much more likely to vote Labour than Conservative. 40 to 49 is when the switchover happens. It seems, going to YouGov, it seems to be around the age of 45 where it tips from being more Labour into being more Conservative. And then the numbers go in reverse. So the Labour vote gets less and less, or fewer and fewer, are the right phrases, as the decades go on, and the Conservative vote increases. So basically the Labour vote are those basically under the age of 40 or 45. The Conservative vote are those over 45. And their strongest support group is the over 70s, and the Labour strongest support group is 18 to 24. This was for the 2019 election, and it is generally true of most elections. Again, this is like that gender one before, the percentage lead of Conservatives or Labour amongst different age groups. So this is for 18 to 24-year-olds. And apart from 1979 and 1983, where more young people voted Conservative than Labour, in the vast majority of elections, you've had a lot more young people voting Labour as opposed to Conservatives. Okay? The big differences seem to be 1997 onwards. It had declined between 1997 and 2005. That may have been due to the Iraq War, possibly. There was a real dip in 2010 for Labour. But then look here, 2017, Jeremy Corbyn, 40% lead amongst young voters voted Corbyn. I suspect that may well have been A, Brexit, and B, the tuition fee pledge which Jeremy Corbyn made. And again, on most old people, again, it's always been predominantly Conservative. I had different sources for this. I didn't have one source. So I've put it over 55. Some of the data, there's various stars here. It seems to differ in different books slightly. But you get the general trend. Old people have always tended to vote more Conservative than Labour. 1997 was a bit of a blip more old people voted Conservative in 1997, but then every year since then, it's mainly been old people who voted Conservative. In terms of age and gender, this is the 2019 election. Okay, so in terms of gender for 2019, is what we started off talking about, all men. 31% of all men voted Labour, 46% of all men voted Conservative. So again, there is a 15-point lead. So on those graphs, it would have been plus 15 for Conservative. For men or male voters, and for women, again, not massively different. There's a 9-point lead for Conservatives. So Conservatives 44, Labour 35. So clearly, women who were initially backed Jeremy Corbyn or been even Stevens on him in 2017 had really changed their minds by 2019. And then again, you can see the male and female differences as the age groups go up. Interestingly, Labour were particularly popular amongst young females under 24. For some reason, but yeah, then that evens out for later age groups. Now, the problem relying on young people can be seen in this graph here. So this is the turnouts of the different age groups. So this black line along the top, which starts off 90, 90, 88, 88, this is the turnout amongst older voters, those aged 55 or older, and you can see that it's really high. Back in the 1970s, 90%, it's dipped to 84% in 2017. I don't have the figure for 2019, but I can't imagine it being particularly different, maybe a percent or two higher or lower, but I imagine it's in that mid-80%. So basically, old people vote, and older people vote. And as we've already said, older people tend to vote Conservative. That may very well explain why the Conservatives do so well in many general elections. In terms of young voters, this dashed line here deals with the percent of young voters, and you can see we've only got the data from 1987 onwards, but 66%, 61%, so significantly less than old people voting. Tony Blair got 68%. He then really dips after that, 2001 down to 39%, 37% 2005, slight recovery to 40% in the 2010s. So young people are not as stable they don't vote as much anyway. Even the high points are a lot less than older people, and it appears to be less stable as well. That sudden collapse between 97 and 2001. And then 2017 was supposed to be this wave, wasn't it, for Jeremy Corbyn? All these young people came out and saved the day for Corbyn. Well, actually, a lot of them may have voted Labour, but only 57% turned out. So that's far less young people voted in 2017 as opposed for Tony Blair in 1997. So a danger for Labour relying so much on young voters is that young people don't vote. And that might affect how the parties perceive young people in terms of their policies and stuff like that. In terms of ethnic minorities, this is 2017 and 2010 and 2015. I couldn't find 17 and 19. But again, you can see that most ethnic minorities tend to vote Labour. So, got the Asian vote here, 53-53, black vote 70-70. So quite stable and quite high for Labour and very low for Conservatives. In terms of education, again, this is 2015 and 2017. I didn't have the 2019 data. You can see that those people who just had a GCSE or less, i.e. didn't have a GCSE, in 2015, 38% Conservative, but a massive 55% amongst that group in 2017. 30% Labour, 33% Labour. The big change here is, and you see here the Brexit part, UKIP, 20%, that disappeared by 2017. I suspect they just switched over to the Conservatives. So you can see that those who don't have a GCSE or just have GCSEs and no higher qualifications tend to be far more Conservative in 2017, far more supportive of UKIP, which is probably why they supported the Conservatives in 2017. Therefore, that group were the ones that basically had a large percent voted for Brexit. Those who had A levels, interestingly, 2015 was 37-31 for the two main parties. Assume that is what medium is on this right hand side table for 2017. Again, A levels and no higher tended to vote more Conservative than Labour, but not by a massive amount. And those with university degrees, 2015, 35-34. So even Stevens really between the two main parties. But then look here in 2017, a massive increase for Labour, 49-32. So Jeremy Corbyn seemed to get those people with far higher university level degrees. Again, it might be worth trying to find out, if you can, whether these changed at all for 2019. I just didn't have them to hand when I was recording this. Okay, so from that data, you should be able to fill in these bits of the table. So these are the questions that you should be able to fill in as a consequence of me going through those graphs. You need to do this bit here. Just do a summary. What's the typical Labour voter in the 1960s, 1997 and 2017? You can change that to 2019 if you want. And what are the general kind of main people who voted Conservative in these elections? Just a general, overview, like for Conservatives in the 1960s, middle class, etc., etc. So it just gives you a typical kind of Labour and Conservative voter in those different elections. Then I'd like to do this bit here, partisan de-alignment. Now, class de-alignment, as we said earlier on, means when people don't vote for the same social class, or people from the same social class don't vote anymore predominantly for the same political party, i.e. people of middle class used to always vote Conservative largely, which was class alignment. Today they don't. They vote different ways. So people from the middle class no longer vote in large numbers for the same party. They've de-aligned from each other. Well, partisan de-alignment basically means when traditional people, people who've always voted Labour, switch to different parties, or people who've always voted Conservative are far less loyal to the Conservatives in more recent elections. So it's the idea that neither party can clearly rely upon what they would call their core supporters, because their core supporters are far less keen to vote for the same party all the time. So again, have a look at this graph on the right hand side, which shows the percentage of people in Britain who say they got a very strong link to one party, a fairly strong link, and not a strong link. And on the left hand side, the percent of the voters who already decided which party to support during the election. Because if you have a look, in the 1960s, you're looking at 12% of people who were undecided who to vote for when the election took place, which would suggest that most people had already made up their minds, and that might suggest there were strong links to certain political parties, but that had gone up to 40% who were uncertain in 2017, which clearly means that the parties have a lot of voters to try and get, and the voters are less loyal to one party. Again, maybe we're trying to find out what the 2019 numbers were as well. And then finally, I want you to do this table. I have kind of made it a bit overly complicated, really. There's a PowerPoint link on Teams about geography and voting behaviour. So again, use that to complete this big table. So that is your weekend work, basically. So you've got to complete those pages using the various tables and charts and stuff on Teams. Any problems, let me know, but hopefully it should be relatively straightforward.